the title that I really want to look at this time round is basically what the government is trying to do is to make CBD great again, right? So taking from, of course, our dear Mr. Trump. However, we do not want to go through the troubles that he's going through right now. Anyway, it stems off the long-term plan review. I'm going to base a lot of things based on this, and it's still there's an exhibition that's going on. It was launched in June 2020 this year. So if anybody who wants to go down and look at the long-term plan review, there are many great plans. There is a lot of new key what we call issues to look about, and of course one main thing they also had plans is also on Paya Lebar, the rejuvenation of Paya Lebar airport. But however, what we're going to look to is basically focus mainly on CBD. So if you bear with me. So going through, of course, I want to show this is not to basically promote URA, but basically to highlight URA always has been in what we call focusing on live, work, and play. This has been the theme for Marina Bay, where I know the theme was the rejuvenation of CBD and all that. It seems very consistent that these three themes for the CBD is to live, work, and play in the CBD. So not surprisingly, the 6 key plans, 8 key plans in the long-term plan review is basically, it includes these 3 main themes: to live, to basically to create more homes, for new needs and aspiration. They mentioned about inclusive and close-knit towns, and of course future-ready towns where connectivity is a very big thing, and also future ready for the old age, as well as the new way of working and things like that. There's another feature on work, which basically the main point is to be anywhere and everywhere. So we will talk about it basically a bit later, where they will create more attractive job nodes, not just in the CBD. We'll talk about how CBD would still remain constant and still remain important. However, there's a lot of placement or focus for flexibility, which I'll talk a little bit later about the spaces coming up, the use, as well even to tenure. And all that is basically to be prepared and get ourselves future ready in terms of our economy. And of course, play, bringing recreation and all that closer to homes, to basically take part in our green, blue, and fun, basically our coastlines, park connectors, as well as the green lungs that is being created. So all this is the 3 key things that is still constant in the new long-term planning review. So basically, there are what we call 5 others. They're going to talk about move, which is basically connectivity. Cherish, which is basically talking about keeping our conservations, conservation plans, and things to cherish what is available in our home heartlands and things like that. Steward is one thing that is new also, is together with sustain is a very big feature on basically how are we going to blend together with the green and blue of Singapore to basically create low carbon, a more climate resilient, more future ready kind of climate resilient kind economy, as well as built environment. And of course, last but not least, is there's one big feature on the Paya Lebar airbase, how it's going to be innovative and active, that it's going to be release a lot of plot of lands, as well as higher what we call plot ratio for the immediate surroundings. However, let's not window too long. I think that at the end of the day, the key 3 things that we want to talk about is basically live, work, and sustain, because I feel that these 3 points are very strongly what we call related to the CBD. So we'll basically use these 3 points and talk how can we make, and how will the plans make CBD great again, right? So in homes, in live, basically in the calculations, homes are getting smaller. Despite our population is still growing, but not at a quick pace. But I think younger couples, it's been surveyed that smaller households are happening. However, younger couples still prefer bigger flats, and living spaces in the future must cater to future trends, like as I mentioned before, the aging population, flex working, e-commerce, and of course smart homes with technologies that basically can adapt to climate change as well. So if you look, I think there's been a calculation or something that's mentioned that in the future, because of the smaller household per population, and if the population should remain a constant growth, we actually need more homes, not exactly to be very big homes that we used to have, for 5 rooms and above, but generally ample homes. But we need more homes going forward for our population. So that is one of the planning parameters that the state has basically put into, right? More homes, more aspirations. Basically, we also need to build them closer to amenities, to already established amenities, or to create amenities within new what we call living districts and things like that. So in the plans, they talk about there'll be new areas coming up, that in the southern side, which includes Marina South, Marina East, and Straits View. And of course, we all have heard about what the plans going forward for the Greater Southern waterfront. So, and of course, we have already seen on the government land sales program for the second half of this year, there is already surprisingly one plot of land that is being put on the government land sale, and that will be basically is the first site from Marina South that basically will yield probably around 800 units, and that's ultimate sea-facing site. So we are definitely observing and watching the activity around that area, and see how the bidding activity, how the bidding enthusiasm will go for that, and hopefully that will basically spell for more sites to be released in the Marina South area. So CBD, in terms of living, I think sites will continue to basically to be introduced. Apart from just mixed development, we've got this site that's coming up that has got a large proportion of resi as well. So definitely the live portion of work, live, and play will definitely still be guarded by that. Okay, the key thing is that basically we all have heard from the master plan that was released a couple of two years back. The key thing is that along with new sites that has been introduced by government land sale, I think the government also tried to inculcate basically a private sector driven kind of redevelopment that will create new living space. And of course, that's the CBD incentive scheme. Basically, that's in the CBD itself. To qualify, you need buildings that is above 20 years and a certain site area. And through that, the key thing is that the sweetener will actually be higher plot ratio for up to 25%. And in addition, you have to create either hospitality or residential away from the original full commercial zoning. Similarly, there is something called this that don't apply for CBD incentive scheme within Orchard area and certain parts of the biggest part of the CBD. There's also the strategic development incentive scheme. That one basically the criteria is similar. You require a certain age, but at the same time you need to have 2 sites to basically adjacent sites to qualify to go into this scheme. And they do not encourage solo sites to come in apart from solo sites of ample size, which they will basically grant a kind of waiver for that. So there are 2 incentive schemes going on in the market that basically allows rezoning, especially into residential and hospitality. So these are the schemes that has been placed in line with the launch of the master plan 2 years ago, right? So as I mentioned, CBD incentive scheme, it basically enhances plot ratio from 25 to 30% depending on the criteria. And what basically to basically inculcate is that CBD, which is largely purely commercial nowadays along Shenton Way and Robinson Road, when it comes to the weekend, is largely quiet. So they're going to put a mixed use downtown in the future, so that 24 hours or more or less weekends, there'll be better use for the land and the buildings in that area. So definitely, this is a scheme that will promote to the tune of live, work, and play, and we have already seen that being covered in newspapers, and the authorities have already mentioned that they have received 12 outline applications for CBD, and of which 8 has been given in principle approval. URA has received 4 outlines for SDI, the 4 outline approvals. So of all, it also creates new launches into the market. So we new launches in the market to have more what we call good luxurious residential units in the market. There are a few stemming off redevelopments, and one is coming from a GLS site. To mention the redevelopment of Maxwell House. Maxwell House has been sold from a collective sale, and that's basically new residential units is going to be created there. We definitely looking out and see what is going to be created from there. Similarly, from the redevelopment of Aksa Tower, they will create both hotel, residential units and office, and we all know that basically the office is already been taken up by Alibaba. Last but not least, from a redevelopment from the CBD incentive scheme would be Newport Residences. Newport Residences, this is an artist impression taken off the net. Newport Residences is basically the redevelopment of Fuji Xerox Towers by CGL. So that's something we are definitely looking out for as well. And from the government land sales side, it's the Marina View site that has been won by IOI, and that is predominantly residential. And that's also be at the cusp of Marina Bay, along just across Shenton Way, something to look out for as well, right? So these new key launches are things to basically pave the way and to create the live concept in the CBD, to further basically and reinforce that CBD is a good place to stay. Hopefully CBD living will carry on to catch on and basically be the next Manhattan or things like that, right? And this is what we mentioned, that it is not new. We are basically banking on what has been already been created in the pipeline, with already Warwick Residences that has already been or part of Coco Tower that's already been completed. Under construction will be One Burnham, Guoco Midtown, the M, and of course Marina Wet Residences coming from Marina 1. Key thing is that I would like to highlight is that CBD is not really just focused purely on Marina or the Maxwell area. The CBD itself, in terms of office, has also been expanded all the way to Tanjong Pagar, as well as all the way down to Beach Road. That is still within the CBD area, and the Coco Midtown area is really something to look out for in terms of office spaces as well as CBD living. So that's what we call the expanded CBD, is what we say, right? So in terms of resale values, I think this is historically the resale values of what we call CBD residential hovers around 2,000. It's been picking up recently on the back of the performance of generally all residential. So definitely more transactions are coming in for the residential portion, and at the same time, I think this would definitely grow further, because if you look at the property price index, I think the non-landed core central region is the one that is a little bit dormant at the moment in terms of growth. We've seen a lot of growth coming in from the suburban, Ang Mo Kio being priced to 2,000 to 2,001 per foot. Lantor is being price in the region as well. And with that, I think the rollover effect is that there's a lot of room to grow for CBD prices. So if you look at the property price index, it's basically, if the next turn for the growth in property prices, I think it should be the turn of the core central region apartments. So that's something for us to look out for, right? And over the years, we can also see that even land value for residential has picked up tremendously. This is basically to highlight and to tell everybody that CBD living is definitely here to stay. Coming in from planning, coming in from a lot of what we call push by the government. Land prices are also has basically reflected the kind of movement and enthusiasm from all the developers, right? So definitely CBD living is something that we need to look out for, right? So if I may, let me focus into the office. A survey done that was featured in the long-term plan by URA, and they posted this, is that they asked, how will the rise in flexible work arrangement change the way we work, right? I think where we work, I think 38%, not surprisingly, would like a flexible work arrangement for more than half the time. I think the past 2 years of the pandemic has showed that we are able to be flexible, and people have benefited from this arrangement, and they will yearn for this arrangement. With that, I think 53% has also mentioned they would like to work close to homes, right? So close within 2 MRT stations, so definitely more work, what we call nodes closer to the suburbs will be preferred, and unfortunately 12% prefer to work in the city center. I might say that these are preferences. This is not what we call how firms are looking at. So I would like to mention that definitely this does not what we call ease off the importance of CBD in terms of a working location, right? So in the long-term plans, I think in light of this, they have mentioned that going forward, they are open to redistributed arrangements. Redistributed arrangements is basically, I think going forward, offices will be open to basically more than one hub. They can basically be a core central address that we still have in the CBD. That is for the marketing, for the core, and for the non what we call revenue generating, or the cost centers and all that. They can be placed in the regional hub, in the suburbs. So we have seen banks doing that, where they have their core offices in town and they have their back offices in the suburbs, and certain firms have already done that. So this does not dispel the importance of CBD, but basically it limits the exposure of CBD office space to most occupiers, right? So there's been talk about core and suburbs, hub and spoke, and as well as core and flex. Core and flex is something on the right hand side that the government is also exploring as well, the planners, in the sense that sharing of spaces. More and more we have seen what we call co-working space sprouting out, not only in the CBD center, but we've also seen them sprouting out in the suburbs. Is because the preference of people working means that they do not necessarily need to have a standard or a fixed office space. So core and flex, that means we still have that core office space. There is a permanent address, but at the same time there's need for flexibility to be imposed on the occupiers to be able to work anywhere. So things to look out for in terms of office occupier practice is that going forward, we will still see that the CBD, especially for certain industries, especially for the need to create the talent attraction, the lure of the address, and to be within competitors, or within what we call your peers to have your address in the CBD, but we won't be mistaken to see what we call the non-core work to be basically pushed out to the suburbs to in terms of occupational what we call balancing in terms of cost. Right, so this is something that might happen working anywhere and everywhere. Right, so with that, I think it has also been mentioned in the plans that the city center will still remain vital because it's already very established. It's got international addresses. You will definitely remain as an international business hub. But yet again, let's not deny that over the years, there has been regional centers, there has been sub-regional centers, and that will basically create and what we call fulfill the flex needs that some of these occupiers require. But definitely city center is something that remains very vital in the state planners' plans. Right? Something that is very interesting that has been put into the long-term plan, and we have been put into a couple of focus groups into this as well. I think the state is actually considering the verifying various leases, right? From short-term lease, then after that, it's something like what JDC is doing. You offer something that is short-term, then where is capital injection, or there is capex being put, or there are plans to basically intensify the use, then they will increase the plot ratio, or even increase the what we call the tenure of the space, because they believe the state planners are considering that business cycles are getting shorter and shorter. So sometimes they want to what we call align business cycles together with the brick and mortar portion of the business. So real estate will be a little bit more flexible to have redevelopment cycles and things like that. However, this is still plans that is under what we call scrutiny and discussion. The key thing that they are releasing now, maybe in light of high demand for office, is that they're looking at transitional office sites, which has obviously worked a couple of cycles back, but there are still a lot of talks and discussion going forward whether should the government release shorter tenure sites on the GLS, right? In light of the shorter business cycles, right? There has been key rulings by the government as well. Restrictions on strata title for commercial properties along Orchard Road, Shenton Way, and Civic District. I think this is a good move because sometimes for an institutional owner or institutional investors, the planning and we call the control of a certain building, it's easier, instead of having go through a long process to get all the signatures, to get the unanimous vote, to go through any form of redevelopment or even asset enhancement. So I think the government has put a stop to strata title subdivision for this area, and the funny fact is that this has basically created higher demand for strata title what we call strata title units. There's already been there because office under strata title, they are more palatable, they are less lumpy as a whole building, and it caters to foreign investors because there's no ABSD, and it caters to home family offices as well because of the palatable size. So not surprisingly, we have seen a lot of transactions that is going on, especially post ABSD for this, and we have seen a lot of movement in this strata title. So strata title at shop houses, which was originally the asset class that is basically short of supply, strata title offices has also entered this foray that has been attracting a lot of family offices and foreign investors as well. Right. So with that, I think we've seen CBD capital values. This is Grade A for the whole building, I might say, the way we track it. So I think on the back of improving occupancy, a very strong what we call tight occupancy for Grade A at the moment, as well as rents are moving up. That's why we see capital values are going up. This is not what we call. We can't use this for the strata title movement, because the strata title movement basically is definitely north of that, and there's something we need to track fervently as well, because there's a lot of capital chasing it. But definitely CBD capital values for buildings that are definitely going up. And if you look at CBD rents, they are also on the rise, because vacancy rate, as I mentioned, is really tightening up. Currently, vacancy is in the region of 6%. Historically, anything that is below 8% is a cause for rents to go up. So definitely, it shows that CBD still is very highly placed and wanted as a place for the new industries like tech, as well as family offices and wealth managers, to get that prestigious address. So the Grade A market definitely remains and still is doing very well, right? So similarly, on the back of what we call a muted time, this is basically implied land value converted from DC rates. So DC rates are definitely still picking up. It's on a growth. Hopefully, it will definitely grow up to what we have seen in 2018 and 2019, right? Last but not least, just to touch a little bit here and there, I think there has been a lot of focus on sustainability, right? Sustainability going forward, the key thing for real estate is that most buildings that the government are looking out for has to be energy efficient, hopefully equipped with smart technology. Hopefully this is a very big hope to be constructed with sustainable materials. It has to be integrated with nature. We've seen the new buildings coming up, totally green facade, that looks very good, and hopefully built for maintainability. This is basically a point that you don't need to have very high carbon costs to basically maintain your building. The picture on the right basically also shows the various sources of what we call procuring of energy, all down from solar panels, to wind farms, and to basically trying to achieve Singapore closer to net carbon zero going forward by 2030, right? How does this impact real estate in the CBD? I think many people know that the CBD, especially the Marina Bay area, is being served by an underground network of chilled water pipes, or the common services tunnel, right? This helps to save costs on the construction. For new construction, they don't need to build chilled water services and things like that. You can just tap on to this underground network, and with that, it's basically saves a little bit more energy. As you can see from the text on the right, it basically takes equivalent to close to 18,000 cars off the roads, when it operates to 28 buildings. So currently, there is in the region of 23 buildings that is being we call connected to these chilled water pipes. This common services tunnel, the new buildings, the Fuji Xerox Tower redevelopment and all that will come in and integrate to it. So this is something that will push down for occupiers as well, because occupiers in developments that is connected to the common services tunnel actually enjoys a slightly better service charge, a cheaper service charge. And service charge is something that is growing in terms in light of higher energy costs, right? So going forward, sustainability is something in the CBD that is much featured. Of course, the reason is because we had the benefit of reclaimed land that we can start afresh through Marina Bay, and how this is definitely being pushed out and to let the other parts of the CBD to enjoy this kind of huge infrastructure gains as well, right? Hopefully, what we mentioned, I think through all the plans to basically reintroduce residential, to make to re-emphasize that the CBD remains an integral part of our office and commercial hub. At the same time, to basically integrate sustainability infrastructure into it. Hopefully, in terms of that, we can make CBD great again. So with that, I'll open myself up to questions, and that will be the end of the presentation.
Desmond, you have this slides on the upcoming Maxwell AXA new port. What are the do we know which year they'll be ready, or any projections into the future?
Definitely within the next 2 to 3 years.
2 to 3 years. Okay. So, right. Anonymous attendee. Hi, Desmond. What is the type of condo apartment in demand by buyers or tenants in the market now, and what do you foresee to be in demand in the future? For example, is 3-bedder preferred over 1 or 2-bedder, or do you mean 1 or 2-bedder is still preferred, but a larger size is preferred? Yeah, I think this in relation to your point about people wanting bigger sizes.
I think to answer that, I think first of all, the pandemic has basically changed quite the practices or the requirements or the preference of the kind of residential units. We did mention that in the survey that some people want larger units, and the key reason is because when working from home seems to be one of the options going forward, I think a single studio is something not preferred, especially you have got more than one occupier. Let's say a couple of a couple with no kids and things like that. But I think going forward, what we are seeing from a lot of preferences, and even when the most recent launches that we've seen that has done very well, is that a lot of buyers would want to look at places where they can segregate themselves to allow working from home, be it a study or even a dining area that is in one corner that can give you some sort of a seclusion that allows you to work from home. So that's one thing that is as a preference. In the CBD, I think size is what we call is beneficial for most of the developers out there, is because it is not restricted by the minimum size guide of 85 square meters that is imposed on the average size that is imposed on suburban projects. So I think going forward, you can create one plus one what we call units, but at the same time maintain the quantum to be still affordable. Because going forward, I think if we are what we call providing homes for the new generation, sometimes let's look at the new generation, the millennials and the Gen Z and beyond. I think sometimes we are entering a generation where they are looking at a home that can cater to their current needs, because their older generation might have something like we call betrothed to them, like a larger suburban homes and things like that. So I won't be surprised to see the younger generation putting what we call their investments into a city living smaller unit, so that they can be right where the action is. A small unit, when if they require a larger home when they have their families, then they'll go to the larger homes that has been inherited from their aging parents and things like that. So I think I would still see a large proportion of what we call city living units to be transacted, because city living is something that the younger generations tend to favor and tend to be more used to, that basically explains why some co-living spaces are doing so well in the city as well, because they just want to be in the action. They don't want to commute too much. And most of the amenities in the city are great for them anyway.
So actually, expanding on that point, do you think it's more investment play for the CBD area?
It's a good mix of both, because I won't be surprised that some would actually buy, for their owner occupancy, because if it remains palatable, of course the new generation hates to be under mortgages and debt. But if they have the what they call ability to basically go into a purchase, they will buy something that is palatable, or even they will rely on their parents to buy something that is palatable into that, and they will stay. Because to stay in the city is something that is being preferred by this young generation.
Right. And there's also this trend that I guess, I don't know whether the government is encouraging this, but this home office concept is it prevalent in the market?
Home office concept, it is not new. It's already in the market. I mean, quite a few what we call residential units. The older ones, the pioneer ones that is being launched in the Marina Bay area. Quite a few of them has been used as a what we call home office. So going forward, it will not be new, but maybe they would probably use a service office or a co-working office for the address, instead of putting a residential address. But I won't be surprised going forward, more and more people, especially when you've got more and more people involved in the gig economy, or more and more people involved in economies that don't require a permanent office address, to basically use the home office.
Right. Okay, let me get on to the viewers' questions. The second question is, how does the second CBD, the Jurong area, affect the core CBD?
I think it always has been the alternative location, because I think there is no doubt that some industries along the way would feel that the rentals in the core CBD might not be something that they could afford, and if occupancy cost seems to be riding up, then the location is not a very big importance to them. They will basically take their alternative and move out to the second CBD or to the fringe of the CBD. Okay, so I think the second CBD that is being introduced, basically it allows the big spreading of costs, and not to make everybody what we call come into the CBD. In terms of the infrastructure, it helps as well. So imagine if you can basically bring out a workforce of probably 10 to 20,000 out to CBD, the morning ride on the MRT will be actually less miserable. The crowd will be basically dissipated into the suburbs and things like that. But at the same time, as I said, for those that require that prestigious address, like a Marina Bay address and all that, we have seen people paying what we call high rents just to get the address. No, despite the vacancy being very tight. So it depends on the industries. The tech, probably they are funded by venture capital and things like that. No, they are more bullish in terms of their occupancy cost. They will want a CBD, but those that's a little bit more cost sensitive, they might want to look outside of the CBD, because in the first place, commuting is not a big difference anyway, right? If you move to Palembang, if you move to Jurong, I think the key difference is 15 to 20 minutes, by MRT. It's just the address that is different, and you bring jobs closer to home, and it depends, because it's usually cost driven and address driven, provided you still want to attract and talent and retain talent.
I think recently there's been a lot of, the CBD has predominantly been a financial service sector, right? But
yep.
in recent years, there's been a lot of tech companies moving into the space.
Yeah.
But in recent months, the tech sector is slightly subdued. Do you see any, reduce in demand for CBD office?
Well, I think there are still inquiries out there, but let's not deny the fact that what's going on globally in terms of inflation and in terms of interest rates has basically been what we call, we take the wind off the sail of all this. Inquiries are still there, right? Especially tech, because of course we all have heard about the big tech firms that's come into the CBD and things like that. The key thing is that when the big tech firm comes, the peripherals will come. The whole synergy would come, and of course the key thing is that there has been, in terms of in their homelands, now there has been certain questionable things that's happening to Chinese tech, and things like that. But I think demand, or what we call the stability for office space coming from tech, is still there. So it's just it may take a longer time to close the deal, because of the surrounding noises that may push the decision making a bit longer.
Right. Okay, let me take a question from Lawrence. I have the following questions. Will the CBD incentive scheme and the SDI scheme be expected to extend further by the government?
Wow. I don't work in the URA, but the thing is that I think that the key thing is that they have mentioned that it is there is a timeline to it, and the first time when they launch it, they actually would basically monitor the number of applicants. So as we mentioned, the media has already covered that they have quite a substantial amount of applicants going forward. They have received a number of applicants, and if going forward nearer to the timeline, if there are still more inquiries, I wouldn't be surprised to see them extend it for a while. But the key thing is that I don't think this would be a permanent incentive. They might, depending on the number of applicants going forward, they might extend it for probably 12 months or things like that. But that's something that we can lobby, and we can make recommendations to the state planners when we meet them up.
Mm-hmm. And on that note, Desmond is very active in VEDAS, our Real Estate Developers Association of Singapore. Okay, another question by Anonymous. The price appreciation of condo prices in District 1 and 2 is mediocre over the past 5 years. Listed a few examples like Marina Bay Residences, Warwick Residence, price of flat over the past 5 years, underperforming other areas. Do you have any insights on this?
I think it's a chicken and egg syndrome, in a sense that, we are noticing that there's more and more amenities being fulfilled in these areas, especially in terms of transportation and things like that. And basically that will help with the demand. And the key thing is that yes, there are some challenges for certain bigger units going forward, but I think if you look at the pipeline that's coming in, being priced attractively in terms of quantum, I think we would see some of the what we call demand or the enthusiasm coming back to city living, because at the same time, because it's a matter of people looking at how the market is going. If the suburbs are attracting so much capital, right? And I think currently going forward in the next launches, the next 12 to 18 months, I think people would be more sensitive to look at the pricing of what's going on in the city living units. And if the city living units, the pricing seems to be a bit off from what's going on in the suburb markets, I think there's an element of being worth it. So I think people, I do expect some what we call momentum going into this market. However, of course, this is we're talking when the interest rates are rising.
And am I right to say that the CBD area, maybe for the residential part of it, is typically what our foreign investors will be looking at?
Foreign investors, it's not typically. I think it is one thing that they will look at is because they are familiar. No, if you give a foreigner, I mean, of course, the 9, 10, 11 would be much preferred. But if you give a foreigner that when you open up a window, you can see the Marina Bay Sands, that's something they're more familiar with, rather than a unit that you open up and can see Bishan Park. You know what I mean? So I think having landmarks around the CBD is something that it's something that it's a true unique selling point, especially for foreigners when the CBD, the MBS and all that has been very, very distinct landmarks that has been projected all over the world. So it gives that bit of familiarity that it's like if you buy something in London and what you see is basically a green patch with two cows. No, I think you'd rather buy something that has got a view of the London Eye or something like that. So it's a familiarity, and it's basically a form of rubber stamping that you're buying something with a landmark inside.
Yeah. So I think as COVID-19 eases, right, do we see a lot more foreign demand coming into this space, this area?
I think it's not because, I mean, COVID-19 has basically put what we call a dampener to the market because they can't view, they can't travel. But at the same time, I mean, it's also the way that, I mean, like it or not, some people may be naysayers, but I mean, the way the government has handled the situation has been relatively quite well liked by some foreign countries. So I think at the end of the day, we won't be surprised to see people putting some money here, because of the stability of the way we govern, the stability of the economy, the stability of the way we look at our foreign exchange. So at the end of the day, Singapore always has been a good place for foreigners to put their money in, provided they qualify to do it. So that in that sense, we're looking at apartments, and a lot of them, they are not only looking for capital appreciation. Is the what we call capital preservation is also one thing, especially coming from our neighbors, because our strong Sing dollar has basically held the values relatively high, and the performance of the residential market has also been something that's quite encouraging as well.
Okay. Right. Next question is quite interesting. The take-up rate for new launches in the CBD appears to be a bit slower than the ones in the OCR, the outside central region, and the rest of central region, where they can be fully sold over one weekend. Are there any explanations for this?
Perfect explanation is pricing, right? If you look, we talk about good take-ups and all that, but it's all about achieving the sweet spot. So the sweet spot for the suburbs is basically 1.5 and below, or sometimes you push it up a bit, 2 million and below, because it's all about affordability. And if you price your units within that price point, I think these are the ones that will go first, because upgraders market and things like that. So unfortunately, in terms of per square foot, historically over the last couple of years, it has basically priced the city living units a little bit out. Because people will look at in terms of quantum. You still need 2 million and above and things like that. But if developers come in, they price their units in total quantum 2 million and below going forward, I think people will start to look at the city living, because they find more worth in terms of the project, in terms of the location. Because currently what's moving in the market, 60% and are basically 1.5 and below, or 2 million and below. So affordability sells. But I think if you want investment money, or even foreign money, or even what you call people who are more modern in the thinking that they really want to go into city living, I think a well-priced city living project in terms of quantum will start to move.
Right, and that leads us to our next question. So for CBD living, would you say that the Bugis area is more exciting with Midtown upcoming? There's the youth stuff going on with schools, art nearby, while Tanjong Pagar is more like just government rejuvenation?
To be very honest, both Bugis and Tanjong Pagar, they are all what we call littered with a lot of amenities, with a lot of F&B outlets and things like that. I think both markets has got its start and it stops. For example, Tanjong Pagar, when Icon was being released during that time, it was doing very well. Then after that, the focus basically, suddenly went to Bugis with a launch of the M, and now we've got Midtown coming out. So I think the key thing to note is that, as I mentioned, this is the expansion of the what we call the CBD. In terms of office, in terms of resi, it has expanded beyond Raffles Place, beyond Marina Bay. It has gone to Tanjong Pagar. It has gone to Beach Road, and it's in fact both are actually what we call government play in a sense, because both of the key sites, these two areas are basically bolstered by government land sales scheme, and that is being released in the market to basically as the Kickstarter. And if you look in terms of collective sale and all that, on this end, Tanjong Pagar seems to have a bit of more success as well. And the other side, Golden Mile, which is really at the fringe of the CBD, seems to also have some success as well. So sometimes you need the government to basically throw in a site, to have a vision for a very big mixed development, to have this Kickstarter, and automatically the rejuvenation plans will start to come in the private sector as well.
Right. I think I'm seeing a lot of questions on the comparison between Bugis and the CBD. Probably because last week in this series we talked about the Bugis and as an extension of the CBD.
Yep.
Right. Okay. So this question was something that I was pondering a lot earlier when you were doing a presentation. So when we were young, we played SimCity. Whenever we try to build out some residential area, we have to put in police station, hospital, and all that. So this question is on the lack of infrastructure, such as primary schools. Would that affect the development of CBD as a destination to work?
I do agree with that question a lot, because the current parameter why usually why CBD and all that has been not preferred as to a suburban, because if you look, or if you're located near to a St. Nick's or to a Ai Tong, or you sell like hotcakes, that's for what we call the later stage in life where you have kids, right? And it has been a deterrent. I think police station, fire station, all this, it is sorted. They are within reach in the Marina Bay area and all that. But the key thing is schools. Schools in the CBD is basically a lack of, and for occupiers who need schools and all that in their later part of their life cycle, they'll probably would like to look at plans with regards to commuting, or going forward they might move to the suburbs, into a project and things like suburban project. But as I mentioned, the generation gap is that there are more and more young couples, or even with no kids, or even young what we call trendsetters that want to stay alone and things like that. And this would basically be the force behind this. I wouldn't deny the fact that there could be couples with kids that would actually need to have that school things sorted. They might go into school buses or train the kids to commute. But I think the preference for couples with kids would likely veer towards suburbs. The attraction would likely be the early stages of the that looks at the lifestyle rather than what we call the lifestyle that is associated with the later part of the life cycle.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and this big question on rising interest rates, so hence the rising mortgage rates, and then with the TDSR in place. And earlier you mentioned about like the sweet spot, right? The affordability. How do you see this impacting property prices and unit sizes in the CBD?
I think in the CBD, you see, the first place unit sizes, it's a very big conundrum for developers, because how small can you do and how small is too small, right? So but the key thing is that there must be a lot of studies being conducted about lifestyle, because and who you want to attract. Because this question is rightly put up, because unit sizes does ultimately affect the what we call the total quantum, because property prices in terms of per square foot, right, there is something currently now some sort beyond the control of most property developers, because property prices basically will be part of the land cost, which is depending on when you get your land, and currently construction cost is very high, all the costs related to development is definitely very high. So it depends on how well you want to price it. But I think the question rightly put is that I think the unit sizes will be the one that will be tweaked, and whether it caters to the kind of target audience that you want, or the target buyers that you want to come in, to serve a different lifestyle within the unit size that you provide. And this unit size will also ultimately determine on the whole quantum size. So all this, when you determine the quantum size, then that's where the TDSR, the rising rates, all this will kick in, and to see whether it becomes affordable with all these things, interest rate things and all that, to the buyer.
Right. Okay. There's this question by Chloe. The failed attempts of International Plaza doesn't.
That hurts me.
Doesn't reflect developers' interest in the growth of CBD strata title. Why is this so, and why is this so with a strong growth?
Sorry, what's the question again?
So the question is, right, so International Plaza, right? It doesn't reflect the growth story for the CBD. Is there no developers' appetite for?
It's to be very honest, although it hurt me, but when people try to console me when it was a failed attempt, I think to us, we did mention that the asking the quantum was something that is too much for a single developer to bear at this moment, right? Because the site is really huge, right? And we do need to basically have a couple of joint ventures and things like that, and to commit into such a huge development at this moment of time is something that most developers do not prefer when there are available options out there. So I think in terms of collective sale, I think the size of the proposed development is very important, because for a developer to come in, they also do not want to commit to a size that is too big, in current market, then it's more difficult to manage. So I think but stay tuned. I think it's a good site for office development because of the floor plate. We've been telling people that if the government is not releasing big sites on the Marina Bay, I think if you want a large floor plate that gives you a great A-size floor plate, in a good location, International Plaza is definitely one of the key things. But of course, it's not just office that is the only investment, because you have to invest in a large quantum of residential as well. So I think at the end of the day, it's wrong timing, to basically throw in to the developer such a big quantum for investment.
Right. And probably okay. So I have another question here, and it's a bit more on the maybe macro trend. May I ask, how do you see Singapore's downtown versus New York, London in future? And by that, and with these targeted UIA transformations, what can Singapore emulate and be like in future vis-a-vis these big key financial cities?
No, I think we are quite similar to Manhattan. We are trying to emulate Manhattan. We are quite similar to London in the sense that we have a piece of reclaimed land, Marina Bay, where they got the docklands. We are quite similar to the Melbourne city centre, where they also have a reclaimed land, over by the wharfs. So, but the key thing is that when the CBD was inculcated in the late 80s to basically for the services part of our economy, it was purely commercial. So plots of land were relatively small and things like that. So we changed everything when we had a big empty canvas to basically to derive from Marina Bay. That's where we saw Marina Bay developments with wide zoning to allow more other users apart from just commercial. So what is happening now is this transformation. What is happening now is that the reason why we are doing SDI or we are using CD is that we're trying to push in more residential or hospitality use inside, so that in terms of usage of the land is no longer governed by working hours. Because it's better now. But when I was a young analyst, sometimes we go into the weekend to do some work. It's a ghost town. And you're not even guaranteed that the F&B that you frequent during the working hours, it's open. So now it's a little bit more better because there are residents, there are people from hotels, who lives in hotel there. There's a little bit more life. So going forward, what it's going to emulate is like New York, in the sense that city that never sleeps. we 24 hours. There'll be people walking around, not just governed by working hours. No, there'll be a local catchment. There'll be people staying in here. And there'll be a very mixed bag of what we call users of the kind of the property. So if the question is asked towards the performance of the economy, I think we are definitely a financial hub. As an Asian financial hub, we are definitely attracting the good talents to come in to work. And if you're talking about usage as the CBD, we are slowly seeing the transformation. We might still get quiet corners here and there along Shenton Way and along Robinson Road. But it's definitely transforming, and there's a little bit more life in the market nowadays.
Right. So over at the Edge, we host some investment forums and seminars on Saturday mornings, and the last one we did was at Marina 1. And it was impossible to get coffee in the morning on Saturday morning, right? 7-Elevens are closed, the Starbucks closed. But I suppose these things will have to change in future, right?
It's really getting better. It's really, I know what you mean, because I've been back to the office like in the weekends, it's like, oh, everything is closed. But imagine if going forward, when there is a more live-in, whether it be expatriate or locals living in, and certain key F&B is important, and maybe even shopping, because even if you look at the shops now, they are also governed by certain shopping hours. So that will probably change when the plans for the three things, live, work, and play, to come in.
Right. Okay. We probably have time for one last question. So this person asks, "Hi Desmond, thanks for the in-depth, insightful sharing. Would you advise getting a new launch or resale in a CBD area for investment or staying?" Like, there are a lot of variables here, but any insights you want to share, Desmond?
It depends, because you see, in property, it's still about location, which location you like and things like that. So whether it's a new launch, or a resale, it depends on how instant you want your gratification. If you want a new place to stay, of course you buy a resale, right? And usually resale, as you can see from the chart that we provided, it tends to be what we call held back by comparables. So you probably know how much you'll be paying. Where with the new launches, you'll be depending on how much they're being launched. But new launches, you're getting something that is spanking new. Has got, that probably would have features in the apartments that is totally what we call high tech and things like that. Something that you may not need to invest in. So as you already mentioned, Kavi, there are too many variables, right? It's all depends on the preference. You're driven, but a lot of this is. A lot of people look at location first. First of all, if you want to live in a city, so which part of the city you want to stay first, and if you look, then you go and source out for deals, and source out for deals whether you want to do it for investment or you want to stay there. That's down to preference as well. Like for me, I don't mind staying in a city, right? Where if I'm lazy, I can go back to, during lunchtime for a power nap, or even just go back for lunch. But it depends. Some people would want to have home as far as away from the office as possible, because that's their the place for relax. And they don't want in the weekend, they just want to stay away from the office. So I think, to answer that question, I will just have to apologize, because there's no high and fast rule. It depends on the location, but there's too many variables.
Right, thank you very much. With that, we shall conclude the first session of this morning. Thank you very much again, Desmond. Desmond is the CEO of Edmund Tsai & Company. Thanks for spending your Saturday morning with us.